All right. All right. So thanks again, everyone, for attending this financial management tips for grad school and beyond. We're excited to have you all in person, or if you're viewing the recording later. But I will introduce our team. My name is Kelly Schmidt. I use she, hers pronouns. I'm a student advancement specialist at Mandel School Student Services. Excited to have you all. I'll let Therese go next.
Hi, welcome you all. My name is Sharice Muse, Student Advancement Specialist at the Mandel School, and I go by she, her pronouns. Welcome.
Thanks, Therese. Yeah, so we'll get started. Just so you know, like I mentioned, we're recording the session. And then for the questions that folks submitted, we've tried to include them through the presentation with Julie, who I'll pass it over to in a little bit. But if for any reason questions don't get asked, you can always reach out to us. So we'll share information at the end of like other resources, and if you want to talk to your student advancement specialist, I think that's a good idea too. So with that, that's sort of those beginning things. I wanted to do a little meme check-in. I know, Julie, you're sharing right now, but I will just share real quick, if that's okay, this little meme
Yep.
just to get us started. Thanks, Julie. Let me get it open. All right. So we love our squirrel scale here. So in the chat, if folks can just say how they're feeling today. I know we're at our 2-week mark of the semester, so this is a safe space just to do a little check-in. No wrong answer. If you want to put the number in the chat of how you're feeling, 1 through 9. I'm going to verbally say, actually, I didn't think about this, what I'm feeling. I think 8. I'm feeling 8 because of the sun, and hopefully that stays out for a while and we're out of winter. But if anyone else also wants to put in the chat how they're feeling, feel free. 5. Oh, that's okay though. Happy you're here still. 5. Yeah, even though the sunshine. Also 8. Great. Giving the commentary. All right. Thanks, everyone. 5, a lot of 5s. I feel the 5 too. Yeah, it's okay. Great.
Just kind
Well,
of
I
probably that
will
end of
go
semester
ahead.
burnout a little bit. That's
I
all.
know it's real. That's why we did it too, so we can just
Right.
check in with folks. So I think I'll stop sharing and then I'll pass it over to Julie again to share, and we'll get started.
Wait, is it sharing the where you were before?
Yes.
Okay, just making sure
Sorry,
because it's not like
Yeah.
highlighting the screen like it did.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm Julie Payner. I'm the Assistant Director of Financial Aid, specifically within the Mandel School. I see a lot of familiar names in here. Thank you all for attending. Yeah, so I figure we can kind of get started. Oops. An overview of the topics that we'll touch on today. So some of the topics include loan repayment, as well as information on federal loan forgiveness programs and repayment options, as well as credit, like what is a credit score, what's in a credit report. And then I have some information on budgeting resources and tips, and then kind of like a general overview of investing tips and other resources. And lastly, the importance of understanding what scams are out there in terms of how scams can also affect you financially. So firstly, if you're a student that will be graduating, even if it's not until next year, whichever semester you're graduating, if you have federal student loans, this is kind of an overview of what to think about. So firstly, one step that you'll have to complete is called exit counseling. Exit counseling happens through your federal student aid account. So if you remember when you first started your programs, you had to complete entrance counseling, and you also had to complete a master promissory note. The exit counseling is similar, but it tells you more so of what you owe, what types of payment plan options exist, and also who your federal loan servicer is. A way to find out who your federal loan servicer is, besides exit counseling, is by logging into your studentaid.gov account. There will be information on that in that portal. You could also give them a call at this phone number listed. We can send you the PowerPoint also, so that way you can take down the phone number later. Something that is important to understand with your federal student loans is that you should make sure your contact information is updated with the Department of Education. So that's really important in understanding managing the billing process and repayment process. And then it can keep you on track in regards to knowing when your payments are due, and it'll help you avoid missing deadlines. Also, when you're getting ready to graduate, something else to consider is federal loan forgiveness programs. So I'll kind of go into detail in that a little later on. So once you graduate from graduate school, your federal loans kind of enter a transition period known as the grace period. So your graduate direct unsubsidized loans enter into grace period status. If you use the grace period during your undergraduate studies and went directly to and didn't go directly to graduate school, then you wouldn't have a grace period for the undergrad, just your graduate student loans. But if you went to graduate school right after undergrad, you'd have the 6-month grace period for both of them. What's a bit different with a PLUS loan, if you utilize that option, is that payment begins typically 30 to 45 days after graduation, and they don't have a 6-month grace period. If you utilize private loans, it's definitely important to be in touch with your lender to see if they offer a grace period and to see what the specific terms are. There are several repayment options specifically with federal student loans. So by default, your loan servicer will be, your servicer will be, so like the type of plan that you enter like automatically is the standard repayment plan. So that's not income-based. Basically, it's a fixed and based on 10-year repayment. So for example, if your loan amount total was $100,000, then the estimated monthly payment would be a little over $1,000. However, if you decide to enroll in an income-based plan, it can make the payments more manageable as far as monthly payments. And for income-based plans, they base it on your income and family size. The amount that you pay and the length of time to repay the loans will vary depending on the repayment plan you select. So generally, the federal student loan payment plan ranges from between 10 to 25 years. So 10 is kind of like the standard plan, but then it really depends on income base. It could be up to 25 years. So it's definitely really important to take the time to explore your student aid account website because there are so many different payment plan options, so you can see which is kind of best for you. However, of all of those plans, one that I'll go into a little bit more detail on is a new federal income-based repayment plan. It's called the SAVE plan, and it stands for Saving on a Valuable Education. This plan is income driven, and so they base it on your income and your family size. with the SAVE plan, the monthly payments are calculated to be affordable based on your discretionary income. Something that's great about this option is that there's an interest benefit. So if your calculated monthly payment does not cover any accruing interest, then the government covers the remaining interest for certain periods. And this helps prevent your loans from growing in the amount that you owe back. A huge tip to be mindful of is to definitely pay attention to what's happening with like the government and federal student loans because they're always adding different plans and different programs. And so you never know if there'll be something new. Like the SAVE plan is really recent. So a lot of social work students and nonprofit students, once they graduate, decide to pursue public service loan forgiveness. So this program essentially makes it so that once you've paid 120 income-based repayments over 10 years, the rest of your federal loans are forgiven. The student aid website has a help tool that you can use to determine if your employer or if your potential employer qualifies. Generally, it's nonprofit organizations, government, public agencies, places like that. So if you have federal loans that are non-direct loans, these don't really exist anymore, but it kind of depends on when you went to undergrad. So the Federal Family Education Loan Program and Federal Perkins Loans programs ended around like 2016, 2017. So if you have those types of undergrad loans, you would want to consolidate all of your undergrad and graduate loans in order to enroll in this public service loan forgiveness option. Definitely, if you're not sure, reach out to your loan servicer so you can kind of see what your loans are. And then recently, as of May 1st, so that's in a few weeks, this public service loan forgiveness program is going to be managed directly through studentaid.gov. They used to have a specific loan servicer that you had to utilize. It was called Mohila, but now there have been issues with Mohila, so the government has decided that they are going to manage this program directly. Definitely be on the lookout to see if this changes. So far, I'm not sure if they're planning to have like another loan service or keep it directly with the government, but for now it's going to be directly with the government. So besides loan forgiveness programs, there's also programs to consider that can help with loan repayment. The Health Resources and Service Administration, so HRSA, has a program where licensed independent social workers, so you'd have to have your independent licensure before considering this option. But if you work in specific community healthcare sites across the US and commit to working full-time for 40 hours a week, for 40 weeks, 5 weeks a year, you can receive up to $50,000 in loan repayment assistance. If you work part-time in this program, 20 hours a week for 45 weeks a year, it's up to $25,000 in loan repayment. There's a lot of great information on this program directly on the HRSA website as well. There are some employers that also have loan repayment programs. So these are just two examples. The Veterans Administration has different loan repayment programs where they provide up to $40,000 a year with a maximum of $100,000 in loan repayment. They also have the Education Debt Reduction Program. And so that's a $40,000 per year loan repayment for a maximum of $200,000 over a 5-year period. So if you're considering working at the Veterans Administration, definitely look at the description to see if the plans qualify or the jobs qualify for these plans. The United States Army has a plan that's specifically geared toward social work students who have graduated. They typically select students around mid-June. It's a 26-month paid internship at different Army medical treatment facilities. And this option helps provide a path to independent licensure. There is a commitment of a 30-month active duty service after the internship, but then it offers $40,000 per year in loan repayment, or up to $120,000 total. And then besides these employers, you can also reach out directly to whoever your future employer is to see if they offer loan repayment assistance. So switching gears a little bit, I'm going to talk a little bit about credit and what's in a credit report. So understanding what makes up a credit report is really important to your credit health, so that you can ensure that it's accurate and that you can optimize any financial opportunities. So specifically in a credit report, it provides your personal information. So your name, address, social, employment history. It also includes any public records of any bankruptcies or foreclosures. It can indicate any debts that are sent to collection agencies. It also can show trade lines, which are installment and revolving. Installment accounts just mean things like mortgage payments, auto loans, or student loans. So anything with a fixed payment over time. Whereas a revolving account, those are credit cards. So something that has variable payments based on usage. Your credit report can also show soft inquiries and hard inquiries. Soft inquiries include any personal credit checks or pre-approved offers. Those don't impact your credit score, whereas hard inquiries are the result from credit applications, which may affect your credit score temporarily. So this chart just shows a breakdown of what determines your credit. So these are the different areas that kind of make up what your credit score is. So one thing is new credit. So if you're applying for a lot of credit applications, that can impact your score. Any recent hard inquiries can impact your score. Types of credit use affects your credit score. So it's good to have a mix of different credit types. So credit cards, mortgage, even student loans, having that diverse mix can help positively impact your score. Your score also is determined by the length of your credit history. So how long you've had accounts open. Longer credit history generally correlates with higher scores. One tip is to avoid closing any old accounts because once you do, it can actually decrease your credit score. Your credit score is also made up of payment history, so it reflects whether you've paid past credit accounts on time, as well as demonstrating your ability to be reliable and responsible with timely payments. And then lastly, the amounts owed. So your total debt to credit utilization ratio. So that's how much you owe in relation to your available credit. It's good to keep your credit card balances low relative to the credit limits. So when you pull your credit report, here's some things to consider looking at. So ensure that it's accurate and that all of the activities are yours. Verify that the activities belong to you. Make sure that there aren't any signs of identity theft. Look for any unfamiliar inquiries that you might not have initiated. Look for any notifications from collections agencies. So pay attention to any notifications from collections agencies, because that again can negatively impact your score. You can also see any credit denials on your report, as well as any denied charges on a credit card in good standing. So if that occurs, you want to determine if there's been any fraudulent activities on your account, any accounts. It's important to know like what you owe in general, whether that's student loans or credit cards, things like that. One resource as far as checking your student loans, so besides your student aid account, is the National Student Loan Data System. So that system is where our university or all universities with federal aid programs, they'll send enrollment reports to this system. So that way loan servicers know when you're in school and when to defer your loans. You can also look at your credit report to see, again, like verify that all the activity is yours. So a good place to do that is annualcreditreport.com. With annualcreditreport.com, it's pretty thorough. Like it'll be like a really long report, depending on your credit history. I find it to be a little more thorough than websites like Credit Karma. So here are just a few different budgeting tips and tools. So there's so many different apps and different personalized spreadsheets out there. There's really no like one correct way to budget. I recommend finding a strategy that feels like it can work with you. I personally like apps. These are just like a few different examples. So Y and ABs, you need a budget. It can connect to your bank accounts to help you track everything. There's also Good Budget. That one doesn't connect to your bank accounts, but it allows you to allocate funds into like virtual envelopes into different categories. That's a great tool as well. Another one is Pocket Guard. This one also connects to your bank accounts, and it can provide you with insights into what your spending habits are. I personally really liked Mint, but unfortunately Mint is going away. So if you have Mint, you might want to look at these other options, since I'm not sure when it's going away. I think it's sometime soon, or maybe it already did, like recently. So if apps really like aren't your thing, you can definitely use something like a spreadsheet. I'm going to send out a kind of a spreadsheet that helps you plan a personal monthly budget. So let's see if this will. Can you still see my screen okay? See if this loads. This is just the PDF version, but I will be sending out an Excel version. But what's great about this is that you can put numbers into the columns. So like what your planned budget is, and then what your actual budget. And then this sheet in Excel will do calculations so you can see what the difference is between your budget and then what you actually spent. And what I also like about this is that when like budgeting, sometimes I'm like, what do I even spend my money on? I don't know. This kind of gives like good examples of what to include, and it might include things you might not think about, like different subscriptions. So I'll definitely send this out to everyone. Oops. Something as far as planning budgets to be mindful of. is that there are a lot of subscription services these days, like Netflix, and like literally every single show is on a different streaming service, which is annoying. But one tip that I have is to look into resources from the public libraries. So Cuyahoga County Public Library offers like a lot of great options. If you're looking for like ebooks or audiobooks, they have this app called Libby that you can download, and you don't even have to physically go to the library to utilize this service and listen to audiobooks on your phone, and it's all free. And then also, case specifically, our university, like Central Financial Aid Office, has a software program. It's called Grad Ready, and it's really great because it kind of, you just log in with your case credentials, and it can help you with budgeting. So there are other budgeting tools and strategies, and also different things like budgeting worksheets, and definitely check that out because I'm not sure if you'll have access once you graduate, but I've also downloaded some of its resources as a PDF. So I'll share those with you as well so that you can save them. And this is kind of what it looks like. So they have different paths. So you just kind of choose what you want based on what your needs are, whether it's paying for college, managing your money, or finances for after graduation. So like, or maybe things like paying for a car, paying for a house. This is a really great resource I recommend. So again, there are so many different types of budgeting strategies. Once like budget does not fit all. So this is kind of a unique form of budgeting. It's called the pay yourself first reverse budgeting. It's kind of a less traditional approach. It kind of helps you understand what you're saving, automate your saving, and then you just kind of spend based on what you've saved. So I'm going to play a video that kind of goes into more details on it.
I don't know if the sound is working. Anyone else?
Oh, let's see. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. I'm thinking you probably can hear it, but maybe we can't.
Got it. Okay, so I just clicked share sound, so I'm gonna restart it. Okay, I had it started. I just want to skip the. Okay, let me know if this is good.
So today, as you can no doubt tell from the title,
Awesome.
we're going to be discussing the reverse budget, also sometimes known as the pay yourself first budget. You'll notice some similarities between this budgeting method and some of the other ones that I've covered on this channel because the principles behind it are similar. The idea behind the reverse budget is to figure out what you're saving first, then make your savings automatic, and then blow the rest on whatever's left over on whatever you feel like guilt-free because you've already saved what you needed to save. This makes it a much more hands-off budget than most other methods, but it also makes it easy to combine with some of the other methods. And in today's video, I'm going to walk you through 3 steps to setting up a reverse budget, as well as talk about some things to keep in mind if you decide to use this budgeting method. Let's get started. So the 3 steps to setting up a reverse budget are as follows. First, figure out what you're saving for. That's very important. Second, figure out how much you need to save to meet your goals and make those savings automatic. And third, spend whatever you have left over in your checking account without feeling any guilt. Now, studies have repeatedly shown that saving, just for the sake of saving, for most of us, almost never works. Because without a purpose in mind for your savings, it's very easy to justify using that money for something else. After all, as far as we know, at the time, the money wasn't really going towards anything, more than maybe a vague idea of a rainy day fund or something similar. which is important, don't get me wrong, but like I said, because it's not really pressing or it doesn't feel pressing, it's easy to justify making some changes every once in a while. And then a lot of times every once in a while becomes a little bit more than once in a while. That's why figuring out what you're saving for is so important. You need that purpose, or at least most of us do. And we don't want to just use vague titles like travel. I mean, that's certainly better than nothing, but it doesn't really paint a vivid picture. You want to dream in high definition, like Chris Hogan's always talking about. Where are some of the places you would want to travel to? What experiences would you want to have in those places? How much do they actually cost? The great thing about asking all these questions is not only does it oftentimes get you excited about the possibility of doing what you're thinking about doing, but it also gets you to start researching online and trying to find ways to do what you want for less. And I can say from personal experience, it's actually quite amazing how much money you can save, especially on something like traveling the world if you do some research beforehand. There are tons of blogs out there that are dedicated to just giving you ideas on how to save money when traveling. And I can say from personal experience, many of them are very, very helpful. So it's very important to do the research and figure out how much these things would actually cost for you. Don't just estimate on this last question. I know so many people who have tried to estimate how much their dream would actually cost and basically talk themselves out of even trying to reach their dream right there on the spot because they estimated without doing any research. And their estimate was way too high. Trust me, do your due diligence, do your research, you won't regret it. I would also recommend breaking down your goals into smaller, bite-sized chunks if at all possible. In my experience, doing this generally makes the goals, especially the longer term ones, seem less overwhelming and it's easier to get started. One idea would be to break them down into short-term, intermediate-term, and long-term goals. Short-term goals would be anything you do in the next 5 years, whether that would be traveling to another country, buying a new car, or whatever floats your boat, so long as it's within the next 5 years. Intermediate goals would be a little bit longer, in this case maybe 5 to 15 years, and longer term goals will be anything above that 15 years. And these numbers aren't hard and fast rules. You can use whatever time frames work best for you. I'm just throwing a few random numbers out there. Or even use an entirely different system that would work better for you. Ultimately, that's all that matters. The point is, once you have those goals written down, it becomes much, much easier to figure out how much you need to save per month to be able to achieve those goals. And once you're satisfied with your list, you can automate your savings to make sure you hit your goals. And after that, again, you can spend whatever's left without really worrying because you already have your future goals covered. As I said, that's the upside to using the reverse budget. It's very low maintenance, at least compared to some of the other budgeting methods that I've covered, such as the zero-based budgeting method. And since the reverse budget is mostly automatic, or at least the important parts of the budget are automatic, there shouldn't need to be a whole lot more than tweaks along the way as your priorities change, because of course they will. So as you can tell, the theory is very similar to the automatic budget that I've covered earlier on this channel. The downside, or possible downside to using this budget, or a similar one, is that you could possibly save too little or too much and put yourself in a position where you either don't have enough money when you reach retirement, or that you aren't able to meet your bills in the present. So obviously this budget's going to require a little bit of trial and error. So if you're just starting to use this budget, there's nothing wrong with being conservative while you're starting out and then increasing that amount that you're saving to meet your goals as you go along. Many people do this by starting to save a certain percentage of their paycheck every month that they know they can save and then increasing that by 1% every month until they get to a point where they're not comfortable saving anymore. And that's a good tip if you're feeling a bit nervous about using this budget but you want to give it a try. So that's how the reverse. So today, as you can.
Yeah, so that's those are just some resources on budgeting, but there are definitely a lot of resources out there. And I'll send you some that I found to be helpful. Yeah, so there are some questions about investing. So I would say keep in mind that I'm not a certified financial advisor. I can advise in financial aid, but definitely investing is something that's very individualized to everyone's personal circumstances and different factors. This is kind of a general overview and some advice that I've received from someone that I know that is a certified financial advisor. So just in general, it's important to think about what your risk tolerance is for investing. So do you want to be more risky, less risky? Usually younger investors lean more towards aggressive investments, whereas older investors might opt for more conservative options, especially if they're closer to retirement and don't want to jeopardize that. In terms of where to invest, something you can consider is to seek guidance from a fee-only investment advisor. So these types of advisors basically prioritize your interests. You should avoid commission-based advisors who might push different products just for their own financial gain. Another tip is to diversify your different types of investments. My friend said stocks and bonds, but like you should avoid individual stocks if you're just beginning investing. Definitely be careful with banks. Avoid investing directly through banks because they might charge high commissions. You can utilize them for checkings and savings accounts, but they're not as great for investing as other options and different types of brokerage accounts. A few different platforms that a lot of financial advisors recommend as far as for investing include Vanguard, Fidelity, or Charles Schwab. So these all are low fees. They offer resources and they offer advising support to their customers. I would say stay away from apps like Robinhood because those are very heavily involved in cryptocurrencies. Crypto is kind of very scammy. There are a lot of crypto bros going to prison right now. So I definitely say be careful with crypto. It might not be the best in terms of investing a lot of money in. So this is just kind of a general, really quick video of what to consider when you're looking at jobs and considering different benefits. With investing, typically employers offer different types of retirement plans, like 401ks, 401bs, depending on the type of company. It's great if they offer matching contributions. It's not as common anymore, but pensions are a really great option for retirement. Basically with pensions, your employer pays into it while you're working, and then you receive a specific amount each month after you retire.
Paychecks, taxes, and benefits.
Can you still hear it okay?
So, here you are,
Cool.
out in the working world, just beginning down the path toward a long and fruitful career. Of course, when we say fruitful, we mean you're getting paid. Depending on your job and your employer, paychecks can be very different and occasionally confusing. Let's take a closer look at the elements that make up a pay stub and make sure you understand everything you're getting, in cash and in benefits, for the work you do. Pay stubs or statements come in various forms. They might appear online if an employer uses an electronic payment system. Some employers still distribute actual checks with paper statements attached or enclosed. Whatever the case, it's always a good idea to know where to find your stubs in case you need them. Generally speaking, the first thing to look for when you get a pay stub is your gross pay. That's the total amount you've earned in a given pay period before taxes or other withholdings. The net pay is the actual amount of money you're receiving after taxes are deducted. Many pay stubs will also include your year-to-date earnings, abbreviated as YTD, to help monitor your annual income and make you better equipped for filing income tax documents at the end of the year. The difference between your gross pay and your net pay depends on factors such as tax rates and employee benefits. Federal income tax, state income tax, Social Security, and Medicare are all commonly withheld from regular paychecks, and you'll typically see the amounts noted on each pay stub. Some employers provide health insurance benefits for employees, the cost of which may be noted on your pay stub. But if you're trying to calculate how much a job-based healthcare plan is worth to you, it's often worth looking at more than simply what's deducted from your pay. Consider other factors such as how often you and your family members visit the doctor, or whether certain conditions or treatments are not adequately covered. With some plans, your healthcare costs might only be covered up to a certain amount. Alternatively, you may be responsible for a deductible, an out-of-pocket threshold that must be reached before your employer's insurer kicks in. Some insurers also require employees to make co-payment for certain types of doctor visits. All of these factors are worth noting when trying to figure out what a job-based health insurance plan is worth. When it comes to healthcare plans, you might encounter acronyms that can sometimes sound like a confusing alphabet soup. Here are some terms to be familiar with. HMO. It stands for Health Maintenance Organization. HMOs tend to be less expensive than other providers, but also carry more restrictions on which doctors you can see and when. PPO means Preferred Provider Organization. A PPO typically involves a network of pre-approved doctors and low co-payments for many kinds of care. HSA stands for Health Savings Account, and it's pretty much what you'd expect. A special type of bank account that lets you set aside money for healthcare expenses, tax-free. It is only available for those enrolled in a high-deductible health plan. An FSA is a flexible spending account, which has tax-free benefits similar to an HSA, but can be used in conjunction with a traditional health plan, like HMOs and PPOs, to cover other qualifying expenses. The funds in the account expire, however, and need to be used in the same year it was deposited. COBRA isn't a deadly snake, but rather an acronym for Consolidated Omnibus Reconciliation Act. If you lose your job and/or health benefits, COBRA is a law that allows you to continue those benefits at an adjusted cost. By the time you're reading your pay stub, you should have a better idea about which of these terms applies to you. In the next segment of this series, we'll explore the world of investments and how they can affect your future finance, paychecks, taxes, and
Yeah, so when comparing job offers, sometimes a salary sometimes a salary will be more than another offer, but then also ask your employer what the benefits look like, because sometimes healthcare plans might be more expensive, and so you end up making less than what you thought you would as compared to another position. But I can definitely send out more resources on understanding healthcare, because that's another financial can of worms. A lot of different terms. So lastly, there's different financial scams to be aware of. So in regard to federal student loans, if you're unclear of whether or not something is a scam, you can always search in the Better Business Bureau. And then this kind of graphic shows like how the federal government will communicate with you regarding your federal loans. So if you get an email from a sketchy address that doesn't look like one on here, definitely be wary about giving them your personal information. There are some services that exist out there that say they'll help you with filing for public service loan forgiveness, and they'll charge a fee, but it is free to file for public service loan forgiveness. So I don't recommend having a company do it for you. So some other scam type situations to be aware of. There's so many different topics, but job-related scams. So be cautious of job offers that might require any upfront payment or personal financial information. Utility shutoff scams. Be careful if you receive any sort of threatening communications saying that they'll shut off your utility if a payment is not immediately made. These are just some other ones. So again, cryptocurrency is something to be aware of. If you're asked to pay for something like Bitcoin, sometimes these transactions aren't reversible. Beware of different lottery scams. So notifications claiming lottery winnings a lot of times require payment of fees or taxes. Don't give your personal information to those sorts of scams. And some other ones, so healthcare. Sometimes you'll get emails or texts offering to take health insurance plans. I just received one yesterday from a very weird number. Definitely block those sorts of messages. And so something that's newer with AI is that there are scammers out there that use like voice manipulation technology to impersonate your friends and loved ones. A lot of times, especially with senior citizens, they might end up in situations because they'll receive like a phone call from someone pretending to be their daughter. And if you don't give this person, thousands of dollars, they're not going to release me. Usually that's not the case. Again, definitely be careful just with your personal information and passwords. Sometimes there are people that pretend to be police officers who will demand you pay them in order to resolve fake issues. I had a roommate a few years ago that received a phone call from someone claiming to be the police, saying that she owed taxes, and they demanded that she go out and get them Target gift cards. So, and unfortunately, they had her on the phone for a while, and she gave them a lot of personal information. She ended up realizing, though, that it was not real, and she ended up reporting the number. Yeah, be really careful with sharing information, like your social security number, especially if you're not sure whether the company is legitimate or not. It's really important to use strong passwords, especially in this day and age. Don't reuse your passwords for a variety of logins. A really great tool I always recommend is using a password manager. So there's different apps like Dashlane and LastPass where you only need to remember one password, which is the password to the password manager. And then the password manager contains like any site you ever go to, and it helps you generate secure passwords. And it also autofills, and it's the best thing ever, and it really removes a lot of headaches. But when you reuse passwords, like you can be, like your financial information can more easily be hacked. So I know some people who also have used passwords more recently, and then they've like had a lot of fraudulent charges. My one friend had a bunch of charges for like a donut place, and it was really weird. But if you have strong passwords, it'll really mitigate those risks. A good resource is through the county. Their Department of Consumer Affairs, they have what they call the Scam Squad, and they have a lot more information and details and resources. So it's helpful for you, and then you could also use them for any clients you work with as well. And again, the most important thing I think from this webinar is to get a password manager. They're the best, and they will protect your personal information. And then be on the lookout for the resources that I reference. I'll be sending them out tomorrow if I can, soon. But yeah, so any questions that people have, you can always put them in the chat, or you can, if you want, go off mute, whatever your preference is.
All righty. Well, thanks, Julie, for a great presentation. Hopefully the students found it helpful. I know we had a couple questions. It seemed like you touched on most of it, but one of the questions was, I know you talked about loan forgiveness and payment after like graduation, but if students wanted to go into repayment now, how would they go about doing that?
Yeah, so they should log into their student aid account, and then directly contact their loan servicer, and then they can kind of figure out exactly what the arrangements are. So it kind of depends. But to start, they should refer to their student aid account. So the federal website login. So not like the internal case website, but the federal student aid portal website.
Alrighty, thanks. And so should they maybe even contact like their loan servicer directly?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
so you can find out that information through logging into your federal student aid account.
Okay. Alrighty, thanks. And then one of the other questions, if students are unavailable to find work after graduation, so I know we talked about, or you talked about, I'm sorry, a grace period, but if they're not working, is there any available resources for those students?
Yeah, there's different forbearance options. Again, the federal student aid website is a great resource for information on what happens if you're experiencing any financial hardship and if your grace period is up. So based on your income, if you're in an income-based repayment plan and you're not employed, your payment might be $0. It really just depends on the loan servicer as well.
Alrighty, thanks, Julie. Do we have any other questions? Kelly, did you have any other questions? No? Alrighty, well, thank you all again for attending the workshop today. I know that Julie mentioned that she'll be sharing some of the videos and resources that she shared today. If for some reason your questions weren't answered, you can feel free to either email Mandel Student Services, and Kelly can probably drop the alias in the chat, or you can also reach out to Julie Payner directly. So thanks again, Julie, and everyone have a great evening.
Yeah,
ahead,
thanks.
Kelly.
And we'll follow up probably in one with recording. And so, yeah.
Yeah, thanks for
Presentation, we
attending,
can do that.
everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Yeah.
Have a good night.
You too. Thanks, Julie.
Bye.